So, my worldview has changed recently. I used to think that mythological creatures didn't exist. Stories of werewolves, zombies, and vampires were told to scare children and the gullible. I mean, I personally love to read them and devour all the tales I could find because I knew they weren't true, and anyone who actually believed in that stuff must have been from the Dark Ages. They were a way to feel secure from the evil that is truly out there by pretending it was all fake and made up. Little inoculations against the horrors of life. Usually I'm a good kid. I do my homework and help out around the house. You know, that kind of stuff. But the strange has always had a kind of draw to me as an escape from the mundane. It was in search of such stories that led me to this current change of perspective. I was wandering downtown, around where the antique and bookshops are, searching for any hidden gems of macabre literature. Must have been down there 100 times as all the store owners knew me by name. Walking out of a bookshop, only a little dejected that I had already bought all their stories on my favorite subject, something caught my attention. A door that I had never noticed before seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. Signs didn't bring it any notability, and there were no windows. It isn't a wonder that I had missed it every time. A little chuckle left me when I saw small skulls of jackalopes hung from the entryway. Incense lay thick in the air. Must have been patchouli. That unforgettable smell of dead leaves and unwashed armpits assaulted my nostrils. Jackpot, I thought to myself. Any place that burned that stuff must be a treasure trove of the esoteric and mythological. Entering through the door, I was greeted by having to walk through a bead curtain, the true symbol of the lover of the unknown. This certainly piqued my curiosity. There was no one at the desk to welcome me, so I perused at my own leisure. Row upon row of horrific and gruesome tales met my vision. Some of the titles were even a little absurd. Books I had never heard of. Anatomy of a Vampire, Necromancy, The Easy Way, and in the very back of the shop, in a dimly lit corner, was something so amazing I couldn't pass it by. So, you want to be a werewolf? The title was titillating and grabbed hold of my attention immediately. It grabbed hold of my attention and wouldn't let go. Of course, I didn't really want to be a werewolf, but the ability to research what superstitious and gullible used to believe was beyond my nature to pass up. So engrossed was I in my new find that I was about to walk right out the door when a barely audible voice said, "Excuse me, but you have to pay for that." The presence of another person caused me to jump. I whipped around, trying to act as if I hadn't just about pissed myself. "Of course," I said smoothly. "How much?" $6.66, she eked out. Not wasting any time, I threw the cash on the counter and walked out the door. If the shop was odd, the clerk was even worse. She looked like a skeleton that had oversized skin covering her. In fact, I'm pretty sure one of her eyeballs was drooping further down than the other. It gave me chills looking at her. On the short bus ride home that followed, I devoured the contents of the book. There was information on rituals and times to perform them, ingredients for spells, and symbols of protection that had to be laid out to ward off unwanted results. Entranced by the mythology and the detail of documentation, I almost missed my stop. Fortunately, somebody bumped into me, which caused me to look up in time to realize where I was. For the rest of the night, alone, in the dark with only a reading light, I sat there huddled under the covers, savoring each detail laid out in the tome. Honestly, it seemed easy enough. How cool to reenact this, I said to myself out loud. What harm could it do? A few candles, a pound of salt, a leg of lamb, Some sage and a couple of other odds and ends were all that were needed. Nothing seemed too exotic that it couldn't be obtained the following afternoon. Biggest hurdle would be sneaking out of the house around 3 in the morning. My parents were light sleepers, and any sound always ran the risk of waking them. There wasn't even any need to wait for a full moon. I guess that is just part of the folklore. School was torture. I couldn't tell any of my friends what I planned to do. They would say I was crazy. Slowly the minutes ticked by. A few of my friends asked me if anything was wrong. No, I would say. Just excited to play Black Ops tonight, was my response. That's what I called this mission. Since I was going to have to be super quiet to sneak out of the house. And that way, I also wasn't lying to my friends either. If school was torture, then being at home was hell. Doing the shopping for what I needed was exciting. But at home, parents would come up to my room to check on me. They weren't used to me being alone for so long. Usually, I was in the living room, reading, or out with my friends. They thought I might be up to something and kept checking on me and asking if I was all right. Lying to them was harder than lying to my friends. A few times I almost backed out. I couldn't take the secretive nature of what I was going to do. This was out of my character. That draw to the strange I mentioned earlier was taking over. Perseverance paid off, and before I knew it, the parents were saying goodnight. I practiced the incantations, and even Googled a few of the words to make sure I was pronouncing them correctly. Wanted to get it as authentic as possible. When the time came for a stealthy exit from the house, I went down the stairs on tiptoes and out the kitchen door to make my escape. For the reenactment to be 100% accurate, it had to be performed at a crossroads. There was an old dirt road behind a crumbling abandoned church in the woods. It was a popular place for high schoolers to sneak out and have a beer or a bonfire. The only party I had been to had taken place there. At this time of night, chances were slim anyone would be around. Virtually invisible from the main roads, and so filled with potholes, only big trucks could make the drive. In no time flat, I was at my destination. From my backpack that I had packed earlier, I pulled out everything that would be needed. By the light of a candle, I read the instructions. Salt was poured out in the described pattern. Items were put in corners where they belonged, and then I got into the middle and recited the incantation. Goosebumps formed on my skin and a chill rushed over my body. The thought of doing something so forbidden was exhilarating. Naturally, it was all in play. Still, the taboo was intoxicating. The whole ritual was over in about 10 minutes. Afterwards, I felt a little empty and hollow. Dare I even say, disappointed? I knew nothing would happen, but the possibility was alive until it ended. Picking up my things, I tossed the leg of lamb to the woods for any animal that might want a free meal, kicked the salt around to hide the evidence, and then started back to my house. Only having walked a few feet from the ritual site, I heard a howl. On my heels, a quick turn caught me a glimpse of what appeared to be a white wolf on the other side of the road. It turned and ran off. My heart was racing from this revelation. There was nothing in the book about this, so I assumed it an odd coincidence. Still, to see a wolf was scary as it was. As the walk continued, a low, dull ache began in my lower back. The intensity of it grew the further I went. Soon it struck me as a good idea to get on my hands and knees to relieve the now unbearable pain radiating from my lumbar. What a sight it must have been! A teenager crawling down the empty road late at night on his hands and knees. Anyone looking would probably assume I was drunk. My skin began to itch and bones felt like jelly. It wasn't much further when I overheard some people talking. "No, Rick, I told you I'm not ready for that," a young woman said. "Come on, we've been dating for 2 weeks now. How much longer are you going to make me wait?" A person, who I assumed was Rick, questioned. I don't know. Not until I'm ready. I get it. You get what you want. A meal, some kissing, and a few touches. But I have needs too, you know. She smelled sweet, like flowers or berries, maybe even a hint of creme brulee. Her scent carried far past my vision. He smelled nice as well, like a fresh steak waiting to be eaten. Without any further thought, I ran towards their direction. A growl of hunger made its way up from my stomach, through my chest, and burst forth as a howl in the night. All rational human thought had left me, now overtaken by a beastly urge to feed. "Oh God, what was that?" I heard her say. "Probably just some coyotes," Rick replied. "Relax and let's get back to kissing. I'll wait for the rest if I can just go under your shirt." A low growl emitted from me as I stalked closer. "Rick, that's not a coyote. They don't growl like that." "Oh, so now you're a coyote expert. Look, if you don't want to do this, just say so." "I already did, Rick. I want to go home. Now." "Fine, but I gotta take a leak first." Rick exited the car, leaving the door wide open, and walked a ways off to the edge of the forest. I sat there, calculating on which I should prey on first. I decided on the woman. She smelt fresh and delicate. Creeping to the car, I bid my time before pouncing through the opening. She must have heard the footfalls. "Rick, I was thinking, if this is how you're going to be..." Her words trailed off as I jumped through the open door. Instinctively, my jaws went for her neck. Only a meager yelp came from her lips before my mouth was filled with savory, hot, spurting blood. A satisfying snap filled my ears as her neck broke in an instant. It was the most delicious thing I had ever tasted. She was like a dessert and a meal rolled into one. Her flesh melted in my mouth, warm, buttery, and sweet. Rick obviously heard the commotion as he came sprinting back. Something cracked into my hindquarters and he began to shout. To turn in the vehicle was difficult with my newfound bulk. With a growl, I slunk out and lowered my head. We spun in a slow circle. He held a tree branch with both hands, fear etched upon his face. Patiently, I waited for my moment to attack. It soon came when his gaze broke from mine. I don't know what caused it, if the fear and panic set in, or if he really thought it was a good idea to run. Like a flash I was upon him. I almost regret not saving the girl for last. As she had been dessert, he was the main course. His skin was thicker and gave way with an enjoyable pop. Muscle was rich and meaty. I have never been one to eat the giblets, but after gnawing on his liver, I understand why they used to be called sweetbread. The feast went on for some time until the first rays of the sun began to shine. Slowly and carefully, I made my way back into my house and crawled into bed. Change back was slow and gradual, and I was fully human before I slept. It wasn't until the afternoon that I finally woke again. The gruesome story was all over the news. 2 young lovers were found torn to shreds in a car by the edge of town. Officials were unsure of what caused the attack, as the trail left behind was from an animal too large to imagine. At first, guilt rushed over me, and I felt shame for what had happened. Numerous times I almost turned myself in, but just like most sane people, no one would have believed me. It's been a few days now, and I've come to grips with what I am. I used to read books as a way to feel safe from the darkness. Now, I am the darkness. I don't have to be afraid of anyone or anything ever again. I rather enjoy it. The feeling of power, the control over others, and this newfound strength fill me with an animalistic energy, and it is addicting. How to deal with my parents is something I struggle with. Sooner or later they might find out. Been thinking about biting them in their sleep to see if they turn, or just moving out altogether. My 18th birthday is soon anyways. So, next time you're outside, late on a moonlit night, and you hear a howl, run. Seek cover, or even hide. It makes the game that much more fun. Who knows? I might just meet you for dinner. Thank you for watching. We'll always have room for you here when you visit. To keep up on great content like this, like, subscribe, and please share. Have a nice day.